Hello and welcome to The Broken Sword. Today we are having a look at those new Empire magazine covers for the Rings of Power.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
So I've been sat here umming and ahhing whether to do a video on this for a couple of reasons. One, because there isn't really that much new, and two, because every time we put out something to do with the Rings of Power, people seem to be less than welcoming. Now I understand that there are a lot of people who don't like the idea of this show, but we also have many people who are quite excited to see it. And of course then, everyone else on the fence. So either way, if you don't want to see the Rings of Power content, I really don't mind if you don't want to watch these, but still, I mean, Rings of Power content will always be bonus videos for this channel. They won't be replacing any main uploads. So like I said, feel free to skip these if you are just not interested. But still, with new images for a new show coming out, I thought it'd be fun just to have a little discussion on really anything new that we can gather from it. So with that, let's go into Empire Magazine releasing these new images for their upcoming June issue. And with that, they released 4 alternative covers. One of which shows Morvid Clark as Lady Galadriel sat down. The next one shows the rulers of Khazad-dûm, Dwarf Prince Durin IV, played by Owain Arthur, and Princess Disa, played by Sophia Nomvet. Then we also get 3 Hobbits of Poppy Proudfellow, played by Megan Richards, Elanor Nori Brandyfoot, played by Markella Kavanagh, and Sadoc Burrows, played by Lenny Henry. And then the final one is a concept art piece by none other than John Howe on his take of a snow troll. So let's just go through these, kind of see what we feel, and move on from there. So poster 1, maybe one of the most controversial, although the Hobbits one will be up there too, is the one of Galadriel. Now obviously at this point we know Galadriel is going to be one of the main focuses for this show. She is front and center of everything. And really from this cover, it just raises more questions than gives me answers. Obviously, okay, I know it's a pose for a magazine. This isn't a still from the show. You can't really take this as 100% worth of how it's going to be represented, but still, I kind of want to go over a few things. Now, first of all, let's talk about her hair. Now, as most people will know, Galadriel's hair is said to be golden and glows. It's supposed to be a beautiful, beautiful thing, something she is precious over. She wouldn't even hand her hair to anyone until that one point of Gimli in The Lord of the Rings, which was a very, very big deal. And in this poster, in the nicest way, it appears more dirty blonde than anything, not really how it's described. And also with her hair, it is said that amongst the Eldar, that they say that her hair captured the light of the 2 trees. That is how unique and dazzling it was. So this dirty blonde, it really is missing the mark, and I don't understand why. Yes, okay, maybe doing it literally word for word would look unnatural on a screen, but still they could probably have got closer to it than this, especially with a picture that you can touch up with Photoshop. One of those things, not really sure about. I've seen a couple of people as well address the long hair situation with it being over her clothing. Surely that's just completely impractical. And yes, I guess that is true, but to be honest, I see this as just a pose for a magazine, not a still from the show. I don't think this is how it will actually be when she's trying to fight or anything. As we saw from the trailer, she actually tied it all back. I think that's how it is. I do just think this is a pose and nothing more. With after talking about the hair, let's kind of quickly address the pose as well. Now, she doesn't feel very Lady of Lorien here, does she? Not very elf-like. I've seen a couple of people say it, and I really do agree with it, when you kind of get a Lagertha from Vikings vibe from her as a character from these poses, not the elegant Lady Galadriel that most people would expect. Again, this is a different time of life to what we met from The Lord of the Rings and stuff. She is a slightly different person at this point, but not that far off. Yes, there are examples which say that it is said that she never actually fought in Middle-earth, although she did take part in fights beforehand. However, all of those instances, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think they are parts of the stories the show has the rights to. So again, it all just kind of leads up to that same, I'm not quite sure how they're adapting this character. But moving on from that, there's a lot of talk about her chainmail as well, and how looking at her clothing, and you think, well, she's going to be in a lot of snowy environments, why are they putting her in this really not very warm type clothing? And with that one, I say, I don't particularly agree with this, because only think back to Legolas in the Fellowship of the Ring, when they're climbing in the snow, he's in just his thin clothes anyway. The elves just don't feel it in the same way. I don't feel like that is as much of an unrealistic thing. But moving on again, and this one is a real bit of a weird one for me. what is going on with that sword hilt? Just look at the size of it. It is basically the size of her whole upper body. How can Galadriel ever realistically wield this? It feels very Final Fantasy over the top type of weapon, and I just don't quite understand it. To have a blade that matches that hilt, it would be ridiculous. Now, whether this is just some Photoshop gone wrong, whether it's something else, I don't really know. But if that is the actual scale of the sword she wields and fights with, it's just going to look a bit strange. But with all of that, I would say she does look quite badass in this picture. Like I said, she does give off that Lagertha from Vikings vibe. And from what I can tell, this is what Amazon are going for, and I feel like that is what they're showing. I'm not saying that that is right. I'm not saying it's completely wrong. I'm just saying that the look that they're going for, they seem to have hit the nail on the head of. It all just feels like they're taking a character we loved and showing a different side of her that people aren't ready to see. And I know a lot of people are saying that she is not a fighter, she shouldn't be like this. There is a quote that says how she was unusually tall and strong as she grew, and that her mother's name for her was in fact Man Maiden because of the way she was. So I can kind of get where they're coming from to turn her in this direction. It's just that thing of have Amazon gone too far with their adaptation from it. But with that for Galadriel, let's now move on to poster 2 of the Dwarves. So here we have Durin and Disa. And to be honest, I quite like the design of these. I like the background. I think it does look lovely. It looks like quite eccentric, higher class Dwarven architecture to me. I will say it does lean a bit towards the Hobbit movie kind of vibes as opposed to what we see in the Lord of the Rings. But we see the dwarves more at a time when they have realms that they really look after. We see those kind of flashbacks where the Lord of the Rings, we don't really see enough of them to get what they actually would have looked like in that world. But something I have heard people say about the background here is, why is everything gold? Why is it not Mithril? They're in Khazad-dûm, they mine Mithril there. Why would they use something less expensive to build their thrones and everything? Well, it's just one of those things. Mithril was a far more precious and strong material, so it might not have been so easily available to use for everything. Gold makes everything seem a lot more expensive, and for decorative reasons, it might make more sense to do this as the dwarves. Whereas they just kept the Mithril for more like their weapons and their armors, and maybe just the most expensive decorations, but not generally for their thrones and their walls. Maybe the case may not be, it might just be a thing that gold makes more sense to the average viewer who doesn't know as much about the backstory of Tolkien's lore, or maybe not, maybe just looking too much into that, don't really know. And okay, yes, let's look at Disa for a minute, because after all, everyone keeps coming back to, where is the beard? And I've really been struggling with this one, because I've personally always thought in my head that all dwarves have beards, and that does include the women. However, the more I've read about things, it kind of brings up a theory that I think would maybe work, and was maybe even towards what Tolkien was going towards during his later writings. Now, this theory is that maybe dwarf women never grew beards, or very few grew beards if they did. What they actually did was when they were out in person, they just wore those fake ones, just because dwarves did hide their women from the open world and from the other races. So generally, when they're in their own homes, they would be seen with no beard. And that is where Disa is now. She is in her home of Khazad-dûm, so why would she be wearing a fake beard? Yes, you might get the likes of someone like Elrond coming into the show and seeing them, but maybe at this point, because that's in their home, and because of the stature of someone like Elrond, they don't hide that fact. So whether they show that as a reason or anything in the show is another thing, but the reason that I say this is from a bit of the writings from the newest book released called The Nature of Middle-earth, the one written by Carl F. Hostetter. And this is where he says that Tolkien actually excluded female dwarves when listing the characters he imagined with or without beards, stating that only the male dwarves actually had them. Again, this could possibly just be taken from one note at one point in his life, where you can find that he says they do have beards at another note at another point in his life. It's really hard to tell. I feel like it's one of those little things that they didn't need to mess with. They should have just given her a beard. It would have made people relax. Maybe bring afterwards that there were different styles of beards for dwarf women. Some liked them shorter, some liked them longer, like the male dwarves. They could have done several things with it. But to shove in your face a dwarf with no beard when everyone expected it from the get-go, that was just asking for problems. But all I will say from this, moving on from Disa now, is that Durin, I hope he is a brilliant character. I love a good dwarf character, and he really needs to be one. I think the actor is brilliant, and I think he could do great justice to it. I just hope they're not used as comic relief, and they do get some serious parts in the show as well. I feel a lot of the times dwarves are used for too much slapstick comedy and they aren't given the kind of stories they deserve, especially with some of the histories that they've gone through. So here's fingers crossed, we see the glorious Khazad-dûm, it looks amazing, the characters are amazing, and everything they've done does make sense in the end. So let's move on to poster 3, and this one is of the Hobbits. So as we said from the beginning, we now have names for these 3 Hobbits. We have Hoppy Proudfellow, Elanor Nori Brandyfoot, and Sadoc Burrows. So with these names, Hoppy in some ways makes sense. Hobbits did like to name their children after flowers. I kind of understand that one. But in general, these names do nothing for me. There's nothing that stands out amazing about them. Almost feels like a bit of a put in your name to a Hobbit name generator, and these are the kind of things that pop out. The names of the characters aren't going to make or break the show for me, so it is what it is. But the thing I really want to start with is, what is with Lenny Henry's hair? Now, I will say, Sir Lenny, I think he has incredible talent and he could pull off an incredible character for the show. But here, he does just look a bit crazed. So, I don't know, there's something that just doesn't sit right with me and I can't quite put my finger on it. So Lenny Sadoc does appear more of an elder here. So my kind of idea is that he is going to be the elder of the group that we come to see, and as though he might be the crazy elder who can sense something evil coming, but the rest of them, as they have no real experience with evil, they don't really think it ever affects them, they just kind of ignore him, and the other happy-go-lucky hobbits really just ignore everything he says, basically thinking he's just a bit nuts, like the crazy scientist kind of trope you get in other movies. But moving on from that, something I would like to kind of talk about is that they seem to be pushing a lot of attention towards the hobbits. But my real question is, why are they doing this? At this point in the timeline, they are said to be more primitive and savage than those times that we meet them later in the Third Age. They're not like what we see in the times of Bilbo and Frodo yet. It is also claimed that the hobbits are far from importance and the knowledge of the stronger races before the Third Age. So why spend so much time concentrating on characters who can really have no real effect on any outcome that happens in the show that really means anything? All you're doing is potentially setting up a side plot that ends up meaning nothing, or you end up making hobbits have a bigger influence in something that they shouldn't, and that's really just going to upset a lot of the fan base. The whole point of the hobbits is they hide away, they keep themselves to themselves, they don't appear to the wider world until the time of the Lord of the Rings, and this is such a thing that has been set in stone in everyone's minds. It seems a very unusual thing to think it's a good idea to change. Yes, they think hobbits are the idea of what you picture when you think of the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit, so they need to have hobbits in their show, but realistically, why? There's so many other great images, so many other great characters and everything that we can have. Why try and shove something in that doesn't really need to be there? Now again, I could be completely wrong. They could be not really focusing on this too much in the actual show. They're just doing it in the pre-build-up just to try and get people excited and show them something that they feel like they'll be familiar with. I just don't really know, and it does worry me the amount that they are focusing on these, especially because where is the Numenor stuff? Why are we getting shown so much Hobbit stuff but yet nothing more on Numenor? It just really frustrates me. Numenor is a part of the world I cannot wait to see more of. Yes, we had a couple of potential little glimpses, but why now release more posters and images of things like the Hobbits who will realistically should be irrelevant when we're not seeing anything of Numenor? Come on, we're getting closer now, we need to see something. But that's where I'm going to end that little bit of a slight rant, I might say, and just move on to the last one, and that is of the Ice Troll. Now this is one that is a concept piece by John Howe. And I will say, for those of you who aren't aware, for the viewers of this channel, I was not actually at the event in London that many people were sent to. Neither myself nor Jake could actually attend the event, so we sent Marcus as a representative for us. So anything that was received, anything that was shown, we don't really know much about that at all. We are as much in the dark as most of you. Meaning, we received no goodie bags, we received nothing. We don't know that much at all. We just get to see what you guys are seeing. Yes, we've heard that there's potentially some stuff, but like this, I didn't know there was an Ice Troll until now. So I don't really know anything more than what's already been shown. But something that I find quite interesting is that from those that did go, they're saying that John Howe really did a good job at describing this troll and how he fitted into the world. And then, as we see from the trailer, Amazon actually did quite a good job at adapting that to the screen just from this sketch. And to be honest, I will admit, For me, John Howe is always a win. I absolutely love his designs, I love his artwork. If I could have more and more Art of John Howe books, I would buy every single one. And to be honest, now he's on the show, I can't wait for the Rings of Power Art of John Howe book too. Definitely will be a purchase for me. So I might admit I am kind of biased on the John Howe front. And it is one of those things that I feel him being involved with the show is a positive thing. Not saying it's going to make the show great if it wasn't, or change anything in the grand scheme of things, but I definitely think it's a step in the right direction having him on board. But really, for the point of this troll does look, okay, maybe a little more high fantasy than the trolls that we see in The Lord of the Rings. It's a lot more different, but realistically, when you think of the real world, when you have creatures that live in extreme climates, like really cold or underwater, anything like that, they do tend to look different. They do tend to have to adapt. Natural selection means they've adapted in different ways to those that live in nicer climates. So the design makes sense to me. I think it looks good. And really, I'll be interested to see if it ends up just being a one-off, we see a troll once and that's it done, or whether trolls might be here, there and everywhere throughout the show. I don't really know. But I will also add, as you can probably guess already, can't wait to see the other designs that John Howe has done making it into the show. So really, what have we gathered from those 4 covers? Well, that they've done some more posy photo shoots and that we're still waiting for more footage to really put us all at ease. Of these, I'd probably say the Dwarven one is my favourite, even if it is maybe leaning slightly too much towards the Hobbit movie style. Everything in these does feel a little bit more towards high fantasy than the world we know from The Lord of the Rings. But yes, earlier in the ages you go in Middle-earth, the more high fantasy the story really is. I mean, the Third Age and the times of The Lord of the Rings is basically the point where we say goodbye to magic in the world, so it is going to look a lot more man-like than the Elven and Dwarven high times of the Second Age. I just hope it doesn't go too far to stop people being able to suspend their disbelief and be able to engage in the show. Everything still needs to make sense with any decisions they make. Yes, it can look spectacular, but again, it just needs to make sense. But really from here, where do we go? Well, I just want to see some more of the main characters. Where is Celebrimbor? Where is Gil-galad? Where is Finrod? Where is Elendil? There are so many big characters that we are dying to see more of. I've got nothing against the Hobbits. I love the Hobbits as a race in Tolkien's work, but I want to see these bigger characters for the Second Age a lot more. I really just hope, and I know I've said this before and I'll say it again, I really hope that they're not starting to focus too much on the wrong sides, or that they're just focusing on characters that aren't even going to be that important of the show. They are doing one or the other, and it could be a disaster if it goes too far. One thing I will like to add at the end here though, is recently in the Star Wars universe, well, from a few years ago we had the whole issue with Kelly Marie Tran backlash when she played Rose Tico, and very recently we've had the backlash to Moses Ingram over playing Reva in the Kenobi show. This is something that I really hope the Tolkien fandom doesn't go down the lines of. Yes, you can be upset with the making of the show, you can be untrusting of Amazon and what they are doing. I'm on that fence as well. I'm not blown away by the stuff they've shown yet, but I'm still, and I'm not going to say cautiously optimistic, I am still on the fence that this could be a good show. But what we don't want to turn into is a mindless rabble just sending insults out for no reason. If we do that, we will not get listened to as a fan base. If we could be constructive about issues we have, and not spam and not go too over the top and start insulting people and insulting actors for characters they're portraying, then we might be able to make a change to anything that isn't being respectful to Tolkien's work as an adaptation. Constructive feedback stands a much better chance to be heard, and really, as a fanbase, I know we have it in us, and I don't want us to go down that same route as a lot of the Star Wars fandom has done. Like I said, I'm not sold on this show yet. Amazon's marketing has been questionable, to put it nicely. It feels like they're focusing on stuff that they then claim to be unimportant. I mean, just look at the guys with the antlers. They're not showing us much. And then when they do, it's just not the right thing. It feels like there'll be a new trailer soon. They've got to do something big with this now. They've got to really bring the fandom back on side. They've got to start turning heads back towards being interested rather than pushing more and more people away. Like I said before, I wasn't there at that event in London. I don't know what Amazon showed everyone precisely, and I've got no affiliation with them to have to say nice things. All I will say is I am going to be 100% honest when everything comes out. I am generally a more laid back person than most with a lot of this, but they need to start showing us something that points us in the right direction soon. So please, bring on this next trailer, show us something great, get everyone excited in a good way. And so really, that's where I'm going to end this video. I'd love to know from all of you what you think about these covers. Which is your favourite? How would you rank them? Personally, I'd probably go Dwarves, then the Troll, then Galadriel, then the Hobbits last, but I'm not really sure. But with all that really, I'm just going to round this up here. I will admit, I haven't had any notes for this video today. It's kind of just been a bit of a ramble on my thoughts and reactions to these covers. So I really hope what I've said has kind of made some sense. So really with that, I'm going to say thank you if you've managed to reach the very end of this video with me today. Stay tuned for later on today to see a video about Gondor's armies, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.